1135. King Henry I pushes back from a hunting lodge table in Normandy, clutches his stomach, and falls fatally ill. The chroniclers blamed his dinner, specifically a heavy serving of lampreys. If you haven't seen one, you might picture an eel. You would be wrong. The lamprey is hundreds of millions of years older, and it has no jaw. The front of its head is a round suction disc lined with rings of hooked teeth. At the very center sits a rasping tongue. It clamps onto a host fish, drills right through the scales, and feeds on blood. Yet despite being a river parasite, the English crown didn't avoid it. For the next 800 years, this specific creature became the most coveted, heavily protected status symbol in the kingdom. By the year 1200, King John was entirely obsessed with them. When the city of Gloucester failed to deliver his customary Christmas pie, he levied a fine equivalent to £47,000 today for one missing pie. The geography and the calendar lined up perfectly. Every March and April, lampreys pushed up the Severn River to spawn. This timing coincided exactly with Lent, a weeks-long fasting period where meat, eggs, and dairy were strictly forbidden. Fish, however, was permitted. And properly cooked, lamprey flesh is dense and oily. To a royal court desperate for heavy food during a fast, it tasted remarkably close to a rich cut of beef. A biological schedule turned a river fish into a legally restricted luxury. To see how it commanded that level of power, we are going to recreate the dish using a surviving recipe written in 1795. Step 1 is processing. We have to scald the freshly killed lamprey in hot water to break down its natural protective barrier. Once it's scalded, you take the back of a knife and scrape firmly down the length of the body. This pulls away the thick layer of river slime, exposing the clean skin underneath. Next comes the butchery. You debone the creature quickly. As you do this, you must catch and reserve all the dark blood in a separate bowl. We will need it later. With the meat cleaned and prepped, you can see why the royals prized it. It doesn't look like a flaky white fish. The structure is heavy, oily, and distinctly red. Step 2 brings us to the seasoning. We are going to coat this raw meat in a dense, sweet, historical spice blend. The recipe calls for equal parts cinnamon, mace, nutmeg, and black pepper. You need to apply a thick, even layer over every piece of the flesh. The aggressive cleaning and the heavy application of sweet spices completely disguise the creature's origins. It no longer looks or smells like a river parasite. Step 3 is assembly. We build a tall, sturdy pastry crust, historically called a coffin. Inside, we layer the spiced lamprey pieces, alternating with thin slices of citron, lemon, and heavy chunks of butter. For step 4, we seal the pie shut. A thick pastry lid goes on top, which cooks traditionally decorated with small pastry fish to mark what was inside. Then we finish the sauce. We take the raw blood we reserved earlier, whisk it together with red wine and vinegar, and pour the dark liquid directly into the pie through a small hole in the upper crust. Now, the pie goes into the oven, and this baking step is where the historical danger lies, because a poorly cooked or improperly stored pie is deadly. This chart tracks bacterial population growth against temperature. Look at this spike in the middle. That represents Listeria monocytogenes, a bacterium multiplying rapidly in cold, fatty meats kept in damp environments. Henry I's lampreys were caught fresh, lightly salted, and then stored for days in a poorly regulated royal larder. That created the exact temperature environment for this invisible pathogen to thrive. We are protected by modern refrigeration and a thorough, high-heat bake that neutralizes biological threats. The medieval court had neither. The historical records claim the king died of gluttony. The reality is much quieter. He died of bacteriological ignorance. Let's pull our pie from the oven. The crust is golden and sturdy, and slicing through the center reveals a steaming, dark, rich interior. The taste actually makes sense of the history. The dense texture holds up against the sweet, acidic blood sauce. It genuinely matches the medieval description of a heavy cut of beef. The royal tradition held steady until the 20th century. In 1917, King George V suspended the delivery. He refused to accept luxury pies while his soldiers starved in the trenches. It returned briefly. A massive 20-pound lamprey pie was presented in Westminster Abbey for Elizabeth II's coronation in 1953. But by her Diamond Jubilee in 2012, the local ecosystem had broken. Dams and warming waters caused the Severn River lampreys to collapse. Cooks had to fly the fish in from the Great Lakes, where they are an invasive pest. When Charles III was crowned in 2023, Gloucester sent a pie with no lamprey inside at all. It was pork, decorated with pastry fish. We can follow Margaret Taylor's steps to recreate the exact flavor of a 1,200-year-old court.